resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you so very much. My name is Melanie Campbell. I'm the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and convener of the Black Women's Roundtable. And I am so honored to have partnered with our sister visionary, Gwen McKinney, who has this vision around Black women in prime time. We see us, Black women 55 plus. Why are we having this conversation tonight? Because we want to be, as our sister Gwen has coined the phrase, unerased. Black women speak. So we're going to have this town hall conversation tonight to talk about what's happening out there when it comes to Black women. We talk about on the cable news networks. Where are we? Why are we not seen as we should be? And there's a lot more that will be discussed tonight. I'm just so happy to be here, and I'm glad for all of you all who are here watching. And we could not do this without the support of the sister I'm going to call on, our sister Edna Kane Williams, who is Executive Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer for AARP, who is a partner, a powerful sister. I call her my sister friend too, who has supported, invested in this vision, and that our sister Gwen came and reached to me, and I was like, yeah, girl, let's do this. We know it's needed. So, Sister Edna, any remarks you'd like to bring? And thank you so much for all you do to bring about change for our communities.
Melanie and Gwen, it is truly my high honor. I love the intro, the song. I hadn't heard it before. I love the term unerased. Hopefully everybody knows that AARP is an organization for 50 plus and their families. We really work to build and help realize that people over the age of 50 can live their best lives. So this effort to bring into prime time, to elevate, to celebrate women over the age of 50, to be unerased, to be unapologetically who we are, and to make sure that there are avenues and roadways that we can show up in anytime we want. Anything I can do to support that, I love this. I love the term unerased. And I'm so excited about what you and Gwen are launching. I'm glad that you made it possible for AARP to support you. And I can't wait to see what we do collectively together to launch this effort. So thank you, Melanie, as always, for embracing me. Yes, we are sister girlfriends forever.
And thank you, Edna. Thank you so much. We love you. I know you're moving a mile a minute because you're in high demand, because you're doing some high demand work. And thank you and AARP for all that you're doing for and with our communities. Love you, love you, love you.
Thank you.
And so now it is my honor to turn it over to, I say, the sister of the hour, Edna. Our sister Gwen McKinney with McKinney and Associates. Gwen, thank you so much for bringing it, and dealing with the absence and being able to kind of crystallize it where the way you put it makes you feel. I don't feel unerased by the way you laying it out. It's like, oh, we about to do something about this problem, right? Wow. And all you have done for all the years that I've known you and the years I didn't know you, for actually making sure that not just Black women, but that Black people are not erased. But the core of doing this around Black women in this project and so many others, I just thank you for the vision and that God has allowed us to work closer together over these. Especially during these COVID months, right? We're able to really connect. And thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Well, don't go anywhere yet, because before the two of you go, I just had to say to Edna Kane Williams, who's also a fellow sister communications strategist and professional. She wears a lot of different hats here. And if you're lucky enough, sisters, and you get to be 55 plus, you get a chance to reinvent yourselves more than once. So I want to say this. Thank you, Edna, not just for being here for this opening act, but for everything you do. The word diversity and inclusion in a lot of circles is like a cliche. For you, it's a passion. It's where you begin and where you end at ARP, but also throughout your career. So I just have to say thank you for that, because you understand it. To Melanie, I don't know. I can't, as far as I'm concerned, sister friend, also known as Mel, we applaud you loudly. And I think everybody who's out there in our virtual audience, give her a clap, a snap, a yes. She is tireless. I will call her at 8 o'clock. This is one of the few people I know who is not virtual. She is in her office working at 8 p.m. Go home, Mel. Mel is tireless. Her commitment to Black women, to Black people, to our community, and to racial justice for everyone is just the inspiration that makes all of us want to do more. So with you on my side, we can't help but win. So I want to thank you both for being here and for supporting us. And we really look forward to the continued work.
Same here. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you.
So with that, and to all of those out there in the virtual auditorium, I want to thank you for joining us. You could be anywhere else on this Thursday evening. So we're elated that you have chosen to join us. And who is the us? It's Unerased Black Women Speak, a public engagement initiative dedicated to shaping narrative and creating content for, from, and about Black women. I'm joined by 3 visionaries, and I'd like to introduce them. Elizabeth Diane White, who is an author, aging solutions expert, and she's many, many more things. Allison Davis, journalist, friend, nonprofit executive and communications expert, and Laura Murphy, civil rights policy expert. Hi, Laura. She made it. Policy expert. Welcome to all 3 of you. I want to just say to the audience, I did not give their bios because their bios are stellar and extensive. Guess what? You can check them out on primetime55.com. Just look them up, primetime55.com. Go to our directory and you will be able to get the full down low on each of them. They are among our inaugural directory of amazing Black women, 55 plus, who've signed up to be part of a collective solution. And the solution is to respond to exclusion. And Black women of all ages overperform. Black women, especially who are 55 plus, overperform and are under-acknowledged. But what I can say this evening on this stage with these boxes, Erasure ends here, right now. So thank you, ladies. This will be an interactive conversation with our panelists. They are friends, they are sisters. They are going to be sharing Each of the three of them will get a question. It's not going to be a presentation, and they'll respond concisely. And then I'll invite one of the others to chime in. If you feel the need to chime in, you will. And I know that all three of you are mindful that we're covering a lot of ground in the next 45 minutes. So thanks in advance for your brevity. In between our presentations, we'll also pose some questions to you out there in virtual audience land. And to get you all involved, you can put some stuff up on the screen. We'll see it. We'll acknowledge it if we can, and we'll keep on going. So our first question is going to go to Elizabeth Diane White. First up. But before she begins, I need to do a public service announcement. Elizabeth is featured with Julianne Malveaux in our latest podcast, The Economics of Aging. So you can check her out and check it out on uneраsedbws.com. Wherever you get your podcasts from, you can go there. Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, and please subscribe. So now, Elizabeth, to you. Okay. Elizabeth is an author. She has written an amazing, this era of self-help. She's written an amazing self-help book, but it's more than self-help. It's a living guide. And it's entitled Underemployed, 55, and Faking Normal. Okay, what a title. How did you fake normal, Elizabeth? And what's the path to a new normal in this brave new world of growing old?
So first, Gwen, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with the other sisters here. Let me start by saying that if you think about it, all of us know somebody in our own circle who was doing really well and now is not. And that they are in their 50s or older and they are not doing as well as they used to be doing. In my own case, I have all the props and credentials, Harvard, World Bank, etc. And in my mid 50s, I had two great consultancies, lost those jobs, and ended up unemployed for a much longer time than I expected. So faking normal looked like a few things, and I started to see it not just in myself, but in friends. It's you're with somebody, they have an SUV, putting $7 in a vehicle that takes 50. They're ordering mineral water when they normally would be ordering a glass of wine. They are pretending that they're okay when they're not okay. Here's a statistic that I think is important that sort of tells the story. Black women 60 and older, our median wealth is a paltry $11,000. This was so shocking to me. I went to The Economist today to check that number and confirm it. So that speaks to where a lot of us have landed. Sort of discrimination over a lifetime is cumulative. So you have sexism, racism, and now ageism. And many of us are landing in a place that we had not expected.
So what's the path to a new normal?
So I think there are sort of three things that are really important. One is housing. So many of us are cost burdened with housing. We have to think about we will need support actually uh, uh, from developers, also government investment in housing that is more affordable. Some of it will be like on the housing side so that older adults can share housing. and not right now zoning and ordinances prevent us from living together in a way that would be affordable for many of us. There's also in the area of jobs. We're going to have to work a much longer than we had expected. I was looking at the jobs bill recently, some of the early outline, and older adults are not mentioned in there at all. And we need the training and the upskilling. The other area would be entrepreneurship. 25% of the people starting businesses now are over 55. Black women are starting businesses at a rate that's outpacing all other ethnic groups. Yet the percent of venture capital that we're getting is minuscule. So there are these sort of pathways that we will need to begin to cobble together an opportunity for us to be able to live what I call a vibrant life. In many cases, will be a vibrant life on a much more modest income than we had expected. The final point I would just make, when you though you aggregate how much we're spending, it's $1.2 trillion how much Black people are spending. So sometimes I think when we tell our stories, some of the struggle that we are experiencing, we don't also talk about when you add these numbers up in terms of spending power, it is enormous. So I wanted to kind of make that
Yeah,
point as well.
that's something. So now, Laura and Allison, I was watching your faces as she was talking, and I'm like wondering what's going on in those heads. And this is serious. It is really serious. I don't want to break the cadence of this because I had a fun fact question, but I can't put a fun fact in here right now. So I want to just give each of you just a quick moment to respond to what Elizabeth opened up with in terms of a new normal and what your idea of how we can switch gears. And I guess because we're going to segue into Laura in a moment, I'll ask Allison because Allison, you can't do poker face. And
I can't. I tried. I really tried.
tell us what was going on as she was saying that? What were you thinking?
I was thinking of my own personal issues. You know, I'm living in a house that is far too big for my husband and myself. We want to sell, but truthfully, we can't age in place in the town that we live in. And that's not just us, it's a lot of Black folks. We also, unfortunately, and I'm not saying unfortunately we had children, but I have two boys. And like so many Black women and Black couples, we are caught up with them in the student loan crisis, trying to help them, take care of some student loans as well. So, you know, um, we're getting the double whammy here. And so I'm when I'm listening to Elizabeth, I don't know whether to slit my wrist or to
Don't slit your wrist.
because I feel it. I feel it.
I hear you, and this is a segue, Laura. And just to the audience, I knew Laura in another life. And remember, we were talking about if you're lucky and you live long enough, you don't retire, you reinvent. And so, yay, Laura has reinvented. She was at one point a policy director with the ACLU. And now we're talking about business ownership. So she has taken all of that professional seasoning and has turned it into equity audits with these big corporations. Some of them we like, some of them we don't. I won't even name them. But what Laura does is help them to try to do the right thing if they can. Laura, if you could consider us, all of these Black women, 55 plus, your client, give us an audit in a few words, a few minutes, that
Well,
help us attack the triple jeopardy of racism, sexism, and ageism?
Well, thank you, Gwen. And I've known you for a long time, many decades, and we've worked together. And I'm so grateful you've pulled this together. And Elizabeth, I remember when your story came out, and I was just blown away, and it mobilized me to get my house in order. So you have helped so many of us. And Allison, it's great to meet you. I also am dealing with a son who has, student loans, and it's just crazy. 47 million Americans have student loan debt. So here we are saddled with this debt, with a very fragile social security system that has not kept pace with the cost of living. We are in a housing crisis. We have not recovered as Black people from the downturn in 2008. And so many of us lost any equity that we had. So if I was doing an audit of Black women over 55, I would say that a couple of things are necessary. I think we have to be more transparent and honest, as Elizabeth has paved the way for us, and tell our stories that we are hurting, because we can't help each other unless we know. And sometimes the shame of being vulnerable keeps us from reaching out and asking for assistance. So I think we have to ask. One part of the audit would be transparency. We need greater transparency about what it is like to age in America. Number two, we need to have accountability. We have to have personal accountability for our spending habits, for our living habits. We have to, often downsize our expectations. We had hoped we would have lived as well sometimes as our parents, and the realities may point to something different. So we have to be personally accountable, but we also have to have legislators and policymakers be accountable to us. We are an important constituency, and I think we need to be better organized to demand accountability. The third thing I would say is we need to demand equity. We cannot, look at the bravery of the women who have come forward, to whether it's Governor Cuomo, Harvey Weinstein, or even the woman who came forward around Facebook. Sometimes we can't afford to be whistleblowers, but sometimes we have to find a way. And that's a very personal decision. Not everybody can say, I'm being paid unequally, therefore I'm going to blast it out to the universe, because that may be a quick way to get fired if you're employed. But we have to talk about ways we can achieve equity. And sometimes, we don't always join the employee resource group. We don't always join or pay dues to Black organizations like the NAACP or the Legal Defense Fund or other organizations or Color of Change that can help us stay aware and make us understand our rights, and help us join petitions and demand equity in whatever capacity we're comfortable with. I can't speak for all women, and I'm not going to try to, but I know that there have been points in my career where I've had to put my job on the line and say, I want X because the men are getting X and I deserve X, and I've been doing it longer and I've taught some of these men. And so, we've got to have the courage. We have to have transparency. We have to have accountability. And without those two things, we will not get equity.
Yeah. And that actually is three things. And I'm going to lighten it up for a moment. Lighten it up or gray it up or whatever. So here's a question. And these sisters, it's obvious they don't have to answer it. Black women are increasingly opting to sport their natural hair, okay? In the audience, I want you all to answer. Do you think we should also embrace our natural hair color, platinums, gray, silver, white? Let's just put it in there. What do you say? Audience, yes, no, maybe so? You're in the show. What do you think? So you all think about that, and I think that our social mavens are collecting this stuff, and we're going to put it all together in a post-show analysis. I see Nicole say, absolutely, yes, yes, ma'am.
But Gwen, can I just say that
Yes.
COVID helped a lot of us cross the line because we couldn't go into the salon. We didn't want to mess with that dye in the kitchen sink, and we didn't want to pay the money. And so I think it was a confluence that you're going to see a lot more gray hair when you finally do go back into the office. And I love the freedom.
Yes,
not having to.
I hear you. And to each his own, because Darla says, whatever works for you, I'm staying black. Well, listen, ladies, and this is a good segue. One of the things, it has to do with imagery. And honestly, I have a friend who did an experiment. She had a blonde wig and she had her own hair, which is gray. And she said she's in real estate. She's a real estate agent. And she did an experiment to see the reactions that she got when she wore her blonde and the reactions she got when she just went with her natural gray hair. And the natural gray hair, she was being treated like she didn't know what she was talking about. She was almost like, okay, there, little lady, you want to go sit down? You need some water. People's voices were even different. And so it's this imagery that we deal with. And I'm getting ready to go to Allison, my sister friend who has been in media and producer. And I hear you, Linda. You think Linda, right, more naturally colored hair is great, dark gray, white. But full disclosure, I have much more gray hair than you'll ever see. Okay, thank you. So the question about the media and the projections of the media, we did a little study. We, meaning Unerased, commissioned a quantitative research firm to look at who's in the Primetime lineup as hosts, as contributors, as experts, as guests. And we looked over just a short period of time, which amounted to 1,867 appearances during a primetime period from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., Monday through Friday. The three major cable news networks, CNN, MSNBC, and if anyone watches Fox, I'm not going to hate on you, but anyway, throw that in there because they are the major. And of that 1,862 appearances, ladies, audience, 1.6% or 21 of those appearances, 28 when you include the women who were on more than one show, 21 Black women 55 plus out of that 1,862. That tells you something right there. I want to just, before I go into Allison, who has a lot to say about the media, do us a favor, folks out there, and mention your favorite primetime cable news host in the comment box. Just tell us who they are, and we'll look at it later. That's a great segue into Allison J. Davis, who spent many years working behind the scenes as a producer of network television, most notably The Today Show. And she also had a hand in launching MSNBC many years ago. Allison has a great knowledge about media representation and underrepresentation. And I have to ask you, not because you are doing anything to make it happen, and you actually did a lot to bring the diversity into onto the small screen. But why don't we see older Black women on primetime cable, Allison?
Oh, great question. And let me say, Gwen, that my career and the great career that I had was in part because of you. With the Today Show providing me with some of the greatest exclusives. And I can think of Lonnie Guinier. I can think of a dozen of them. So I always want to thank you for that. And let me also say, Laura, I worked for the ACLU for a hot second in New York to help them with some writing in their communications department, and remember your name as well. Um, uh, you know, I honestly, uh, I spent over almost 40 years in television news, and I can truthfully say that ageism was always something that came up. In at the Today Show, at Good Morning America, CBS Morning News, when we were all hot and heavy, competing against each other. And the sad part is now more than ever, when we need the historic perspective that only older Black women can bring to the table. We have lived through, even though I was just a year old, but lived through, Brown versus the Board of Ed. We've lived through affirmative action. We've lived through the civil rights era. We lived through all of these things and have a historic perspective that we can share and give the viewer something that they're not getting now. I always say, and you can get me wound up on this all the time. I always say that I have to remind people that Paul McCartney's first band wasn't Wings. And they look at me like, what? No, what? The truth is that many of these producers now think that if it didn't happen in their time, it didn't happen. And there's so much that you have to remind them that they can learn. And of course, it is a cost factor with a lot of these folks. Producers who provide information or provide guests or find guests who think and look like them. Those producers are young and they're cheap. And that's what it comes down to. It is, who can we find to work cheaper than the older woman?
And
And
so
that's
they're not
historically.
substantive, right? They're not substantive. That's what you're saying. Now,
Yes, we all know that, again, having that historic perspective, being able to dig into our toolboxes and say, well, this is what happened prior to what's happening now. Let me tell you how we got here.
Right.
You don't hear that on the news, and it's
Well,
very, very disconcerting.
I saw my sister friend Kim Crenshaw say, WTH. Right, Kim, I hear you. Elizabeth, do you think, and see, you're getting something started here, Allison, and I really want to roll with it. Do you think they just don't like us? Or they don't think we have anything to say? Or they don't want to hear what we have to say? Or our worldview is not important? What is it, Elizabeth, in your mind?
So I think it actually extends beyond us to just ageism. I look at some of the data on workplace ageism. There's a great study by the Urban Institute and ProPublica that shows that 52% of people in their 50s will lose their jobs. All of these people didn't suddenly become incompetent. And of that number, of the 52% who lose their jobs in their 50s, only 10% ever again get a job that is commensurate in pay and status with the one they left. So this is just an America that is preoccupied with youth. But it's going to change. We're soon going to be a country where there will be more people over 65 than under 18. We already have a workforce now where a quarter of the people are over 55. In a decade, that number is going to be a third. So I think with us, African American women, we're often leading the way. We're at a place where we're going to make the path by walking. And we are a generation, boomers have, led before, we will lead again. As we are living longer, longer than any group has ever lived before, We are inventing what it means to be old. I'm not my grandmother. I'm 67. I'm not my grandmother's 67. So this is, we're in new terrain here, and the world has not yet caught up, but it's going to have to.
Well, that point about we have a lot of power in our own hands. And, from my perspective, you could bitch and moan about this all night long. One of the reasons why we launched this Primetime 55 directory, and yeah, it's a public service announcement again, and these three sisters are in that directory. And Kim Crenshaw, you need to be in that directory. I'm just saying that. But the reason why is because we can wait forever for someone to say we're worthy of being acknowledged. But if we acknowledge ourselves, we don't have to wait for them. And that's the really important thing. So that's one way of being seen and heard. Laura, what are some other ways that you think we can be seen and heard?
I think we have to keep talking like we're doing tonight. And I also think we have to link arms with our younger sisters and say, we can help you plan out your careers, because you better get ready for this. Fortunately, I'm an optimist, but I'm also I've always been pragmatic and plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so I assumed that I was going to encounter racism and sexism. So long before I stopped my job, I was thinking about how I would be useful to other people and how I would build a business. And I think we really need to keep networking. I think our networks are the things that yield results. And we often get caught up in our workplaces and we just think, okay, my boss says this, my colleagues say that. And I've always found it's important to have networks that go far beyond the ones that are created in your workplace, because you just never know when you're going to need to call someone. And so I just think that's one of the things we have to do is we really, really have to talk to each other honestly, and we have to continue to network.
And speaking of networks, Allison, you were one of the founders almost 50 years ago of the National Association of Black Journalists. Are things that much dramatically different or that much dramatically the same?
NABJ has grown significantly, not only in numbers, but in the kind of work that we have been doing. And we have a number of chapters, all over the country. We are training students. And so I think that I don't want to talk about differences as much as I want to talk about growth. And the one nice thing about NABJ is there appears to be a real respect for those folks who came before some of the folks who are there now. And 50% of our folks are millennials, and there's an honest respect for, and I saw Linda Wright Moore on here, but Aisel Moore, who was one of the founders with me. Wonderful respect for all of the 44. And so we really do feel like we've been listened to by the younger folks.
Using and integrating in younger sisters, and we need to reach out, but all of you have said that in different ways, to networks. And when I was talking about things changing, I mean not so much with the national the NABJ, but I'm talking about the world that you try to impact and that you have, the newsrooms and the news reporting and the way people look at Black
folks. And I think that things are getting worse. Oh, good. We are advocating. We're advocating more in newsrooms now than we ever did before. We're advocating for Black representation, and that's more than we've ever done before. Mm-hmm. But I did want to, sort of mention something else and sort of piggyback on what Laura said, particularly about, you know, we are, many of us have had to not reinvent ourselves, because it sounds like we are, moving. Well, what I've had to do is, you know, Gwen, I've always been a techie. And the one thing that I have done in my life that has saved me in terms of job security is the fact that I have kept current with my passion. And too often, I found with some of my uh, uh, girlfriends who, you know, some of my link friends, you know, they don't know what they can do after. Instead of continuing on and figuring out how to do what they did better,
Yeah.
they just stop doing, and
Well,
then
that's
they try to pivot. And sometimes it's just good to be more of an expert than anyone else in the passions that you have.
and I appreciate that. I see some of the NABJ sisters are here and they're saying, yeah, yeah, rah, rah. I want to, for our audience out there, I have some quick poll questions. Yes or no? 3. Number 1, and this is for the 55 plussers. Have you ever experienced ageism in the workplace? That's a kind of a straightforward question. Yes or no? Okay. And if you're saying yes, obviously you've experienced it. If you're 55 or older, do you tell folks your age? Yes or no? All right. Muriel says yes. Somebody said, hell yes. Okay. Okay. If your fairy godmother could grant you the ability to be 25 again, would you take it?
No,
No.
no.
Someone said no way. You want to stay where you are. Okay. Oh, yes, that's great. Going back to what all 3 of you have touched on in one way or another, how do we engage and bring in our younger sisters? And that's really important for me, for Unerased, because we have a really important mixture of generations. We have Gen Zers, Gen Xers, millennials, boomers, and even sometimes engaging people who are the so-called silent generation, who are turning 80. So our range is pretty wide and it's important. How do you all? And I want you to jump in. It's hard when we're all on this in these boxes, but we can start with Elizabeth, Laura, and Allison. How do you engage younger sisters? Or how do we, or how should we?
One of the things I would say is that when I think of my most recent opportunities, or whether it's consulting, speaking, etc., often it's coming from younger people. What you find as you get into your late 50s and 60s is that your network is disintegrating because people are retiring. Actually, some people have died, they're out of the game, etc. And I found that I'm actually very intentional about getting to know younger people. They still know where the resources are. They know who's in an organization is about to, get promoted, and they can turn you on to opportunities that you otherwise would not know about. I also think it's important to keep your heel in the door if you are in an organization in a mentoring role to younger people. When I've worked in places, I've been really intentional about bringing younger women and men along and teaching them, giving them opportunities that I think would benefit them.
Mm-hmm. Someone, I think Muriel Cooper, says that we have to also teach young people about ageism because we are dealing with it in a way, perhaps the first generation who has dealt with it. That's a really important point. And when Allison said what we've come through, or I don't know whether it's Laura. Remember, we witnessed the first moonshot. So we know what that means. And it was a miraculous generation, you know? So Laura, how do you engage younger people?
Well, there's this young woman, Joteka Eddie, who I've known since she was at the NAACP. And she started a group that I belong to that talks
Black women.
Win with Black women.
I think we're all part of it, Laura.
Okay, so but you know, I don't know if the viewing public knows about it, but I do that to support her and the young women, and I also push a lot of job announcements to that listserv. I've curated the listservs that I want to be on. So I want to get information that will be useful to other people. So I get information from, you know, former Black Hill staffers and former ACLU employees, and so I have a deep relationship with the people I've hired over the years and I've mentored over the years. And I have to agree with Elizabeth. A lot of the contracts that I've gotten in my business have come from the young people I've mentored. And it's just, so I think, you know, what's the parable in the Bible? You cast your bread upon the water. My mother used to say, you cast your bread upon the water and it comes back buttered. So in order to receive, I think you have to give. Absolutely. And so I try to keep giving, and I try to be known as a giver and as a person who has an open door. So when the young sisters are having a problem, they can call me.
Allison, what say you?
Well, NABJ has every year a convention, and during that convention, we have a student mentoring project. And we bring young journalists, student journalists from around the country. And I tend to pick up 2 or 3 to mentor every year. I'm proud to say that one of my mentees from 2 years ago just won an Emmy, a local Emmy, and for some work that she has done. And if they are in town, I try to, you know, take them out to lunch periodically and spend some time with them. So when I was in my early 60s, I coached basketball, and some of those, and I played until my hip came out. But I will tell you, and I played well into my 60s, probably until I was 64, and that was far longer than I should have played. But oh, believe me. But I say that to say
that's awesome.
But I say that to say I still can bounce a ball. And I can still shoot, but I'm not running up and down that court. But I will say that playing against younger women gave me some court cred because they knew I was an older woman, a senior, and I was beating their behinds on the court.
That's wonderful. So listen, to our audience, we've got, I call it in a word, okay? In a word. We're going to create some visuals. April tells me she has an idea of a word cloud with all the imagery of the words. So I have 3 questions, and you're going to give a word. Just a word, okay? 1, what is the single most rewarding aspect of getting older? And this is whether you are 55 plus or 35 or whatever. What is the one word you can say that is rewarding and affirming with each birthday? What is it? Put it in this chat. We need to get it because we're going to do something with this. And we're going to report later. Friendship's one thing. Come on, tell us. Wisdom is another. Let us hear from you. What are the words that really speak to perspective? That's my sister, Diane McKinney Whetstone, my real sister, blood sister. Self-acceptance. Absolutely. Freedom. Wow, I like that one. Okay, alive. Go, girl. So keep putting those words in the chat. The second question, for those under 55, what's the one thing you're looking forward to most when you hit that mark? What's one thing that it's a little bit different from the first question? What are you looking for? Growth. Okay. What else? We want to see that serenity. Hey, that's important. Gratitude. I'd like to say some rest. That's just okay. About that meme, okay, boomer. Some say it's dismissive, others cute. What's your word for it? For okay, boomer? Tell us. Maybe I'll ask our panel. We'll start with Elizabeth. What does okay, boomer mean to you?
It was something I ignored. I thought it was a distraction to pit us against each other, and was not worthy of paying attention to. You know, I'm sort of in a space where I'm right now interested in forward thinkers, people who are kind of on the edgy front end. Um, some other people and points of view for me at this age and stage, just too much labor. I'm not going to do it. And okay, boomer sort of fit in that category for me.
Laura, what's your thoughts?
I think it's funny because, you can try to be racist, but you're not going to be successful. So if you were trying to be dismissive by saying, okay, boomer, good luck with that. I'm not worried about it. It's when the negativity stays with the person who's generating it. It's not, I'm not accepting it.
Right.
Exactly.
Labels are for cans. Okay. That's Muriel. Muriel's on fire today. What about you, Allison?
I will be very honest. I've never ever heard that. Okay, boomer.
Wow.
I've never ever heard it.
Okay.
And so I will agree with, if it's derogatory, I will agree with Elizabeth and Laura, and I will agree with some of the posters, but I have never heard it. Maybe it's because I have this look on my face when somebody looks as if they're going to classify me in some way, but I have never heard it.
The negativity stays with the person that generated. You're so right, Joshua Levi. So now we're kind of coming down to wind up to the top of the hour, and I promise this is just an hour. I want, if each of you could put a message in a time capsule, in a bottle, for a time capsule to be open maybe 100 years from now, about where we are today. As women, as Black women 55 plus, what is the word, the thought, the idea that you want to leave for posterity? And we'll start with Laura, then Allison, and then wind down with Elizabeth.
If it's going in my time capsule, I'm going to say, and still we rise.
Excellent. Allison, what about you?
Well, based upon this conversation, I want everybody to know that we didn't ignore this problem, that we are facing it, and that we are trying to make substantive changes, not only for us, but for those who will come after us.
Thank you for that. And Elizabeth?
We're making our path by walking.
Yeah, that's almost like a proverb. I can see it somewhere. So we're gonna wind down, and I wanted to mention, as we do wind down, that Unembraced Black Women Speak, we did change our name, and this branding has been amazing because people think we're a new organization. I don't know whether we branded so well or we were just so silent in the past. We've actually been around since March of 2020. But one thing that we are continuing to do, and we really want folks to please plug in, number one, we're going to continue to build Primetime 55 Plus, the directory. But we also have a marvelous podcast, Kitchen Table Podcast. And our colleague, Carolyn Malachi and Lawan Hamilton and a whole group of folks are working on that. Please, if you have not yet subscribe. You can go to Spotify, Apple, etc. My team tells me you need some calls to action. UnerasBWS.com. There is a fabulous page with all of our podcasts. And one thing about the podcasts, they're not dated. They are evergreen. Again, these 3 inspiring women are part of about 80. And everyone who's in our directory has to opt in. We don't just put folks in there. And they have submitted their goods, and we've accepted them, and we're giving light and love to them. Please check out primetime55plus.com. Also, this is a shout out to my team, amazing social media mavens, Antoinette Miner, April Perry McKellar, Alyssa Davis. I call them the 3 A's, and they got help from Joshua Levi Perrin and Alice Kavoris. Thank you very much, team. I love you. I couldn't do it without you. And I want to thank all of you and ask you to please stay safe, stay sane, and stay curious. And we're going to take you out with our new theme song, which of course is Unerased. Look at it, it's beautiful. It's a video, and a lot of our primetime people are featured in that video. So with that, we've got just a couple minutes to close out. We're gonna close out and say to everyone, thank you, dear sister friends. Thank you everyone for being with us.
It's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a sisterhood, of a race. In my shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength. It's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a sisterhood, of a race. Appreciation, I need to know you know who I am and what I've achieved. Honor my journey, you could learn from me. Where there's a ruse, I speak the truth. With respect and appreciation, I want for you the very best in all situations. When we get together, I feel so alive, no lie. Oh, we don't put up with no way. Yeah, we are done risking our necks. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a system, of a race. It's the strength, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a system, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased of a system, of a